On a quiet Sunday morning, the entire course of the 20th century was thrown into chaos. We're going to break down the attack on Pearl Harbor, the one moment that yanked a reluctant United States right into the heart of World War II.
Okay, just take a look at this. This picture was taken from a Japanese plane. It's just after 8 a.m. on December 7th, 1941. Down below, you can see the pride of the American Pacific Fleet, just sitting there, peaceful. In a matter of minutes, this whole scene is going to become an absolute inferno. This one image is literally the moment America's feeling of safety was shattered.
What happened that day was a surprise military strike, carried out with shocking brutality and precision by the Empire of Japan. It was a massive, calculated gamble, really, an attempt to cripple the U.S. in the Pacific with a single, devastating blow.
But, something this huge doesn't just happen out of the blue. To really get why it happened, we've got to rewind a bit and look at the years of tension that were bubbling just under the surface, pushing everyone closer and closer to the edge. So what you're seeing here is basically a decade-long collision course. Japan keeps expanding into China, looking for resources, and with every move, the U.S. squeezes them harder with economic sanctions. The breaking point? That crippling oil embargo in July of '41. For Japan's military, that was a direct threat to their entire vision. So by the time these final diplomatic notes were being passed back and forth in November, it was already too late. The decision for war had been made, and the Japanese attack fleet was already on its way.
And this is where the talking just completely falls apart. Japan put an offer on the table. We'll pull back a little if you ease up on the economy. But the American reply, what's known as the Hull Note, wasn't a compromise. It was an ultimatum. Get out of China and Indochina completely and unconditionally. There was just no middle ground left. A peaceful solution was officially off the table.
This map from 1939 really shows you the corner Japan felt it was in. All the resources they desperately needed were right there in Southeast Asia, but smack in the middle of their path were American holdings like the Philippines. So, for Japan's military leaders, taking out the U.S. fleet at Pearl Harbor wasn't just an idea, they saw it as a necessary first move to get what they wanted.
So, diplomacy is dead. The pieces are in place. Now let's see how all this tension exploded into one of the most meticulously planned and devastatingly effective assaults in military history, Operation Z.
The key to this whole thing, the absolute linchpin, was total surprise. To pull it off, a massive fleet of 6 aircraft carriers sailed this incredibly treacherous northern route. They stayed way off the normal shipping lanes and for over a week maintained complete and total radio silence. It was an unbelievably bold and risky move.
Now, if you just glance at this, you might think the forces look kind of evenly matched, right? The aircraft numbers are pretty close. But the all-important detail is the carriers. Japan brought 6 of them. America's, all 3 of its Pacific carriers just happened to be out at sea. That single fact gave Japan total air supremacy over the island, combining surprise with just overwhelming power. 353. Just let that number sink in. That's how many Japanese fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes were about to fall out of the sky over Oahu in 2 separate waves. It was a flying armada, and it was aimed at total annihilation. The Japanese strategy was just brilliant in its brutality. It was a classic 1-2 punch. The first wave hit at 7:48 a.m. That was the knockout blow, aimed straight at the battleships and the airfields to just wipe out any chance of a fight. Then, about an hour later, the second wave came in to finish the job, hitting whatever was left and making sure the chaos was complete.
And the impact was instantaneous, catastrophic. The U.S. Arizona took a direct hit from an armor-piercing bomb that went straight into its forward ammunition magazine. The ship just vaporized. It exploded and sank in under 9 minutes, taking 1,177 of her crew down with her. To this day, it's the greatest single loss of life on any U.S. warship ever.
And up and down Battleship Row, it was the same story of absolute devastation. The USS West Virginia was ripped open by torpedoes and sank right where she was tied up. Meanwhile, over at the airfields, the planes were all parked wingtip to wingtip. Why? To make it easier to guard them against sabotage. The tragic irony is that it made them perfect sitting ducks. They were blown to pieces on the ground before a single pilot could get in one to fight back.
But, even in the middle of all that horror, there were these incredible moments of pure heroism. Take the crew of the USS Nevada. The ship was already on fire and damaged, but they managed to get her moving, the only battleship to get underway during the whole attack. They were fighting through a storm of bombs, trying to make it to the open sea, before they finally had to beach the burning ship so it wouldn't sink and block the channel for everyone else.
The entire attack was over in less than 2 hours. So, when the smoke finally cleared, what was the real cost? And did Japan actually achieve what it set out to do?
This number, this is what truly stunned the nation. 2,403 Americans were killed. These were sailors, soldiers, Marines, and civilians. It was a human toll that just completely galvanized the country in a way nothing else could.
So if you look at this purely as a military scorecard, it was a staggering victory for Japan. I mean, it was a blowout. 8 U.S. battleships were put out of action, almost 200 planes were destroyed, and what did it cost Japan? Just 29 planes and a handful of small submarines. The results were incredibly one-sided.
So, on paper, it seems like a brilliant, flawless military operation, a massive win. But when you start to look a little closer, some really critical mistakes, strategic failures begin to pop up. And those failures would end up costing Japan dearly.
Here's where the story gets really interesting. First, and this is huge, the most important ships in the U.S. Navy, the aircraft carriers, weren't even there. They were out at sea and completely untouched. On top of that, the Japanese admiral, Nagumo, got worried about a counterattack and canceled the planned third wave of planes. That decision meant the base's fuel depots, the repair yards, and the submarine base were all left standing.
And this map right here shows you just how big of a mistake that was. By not taking out those huge oil tanks and the ship repair facilities, the Japanese basically left the heart of the U.S. Pacific Fleet's logistics intact. It allowed America to repair, refuel, and fight back from that very same base way, way faster than anyone could have predicted.
But maybe the biggest miscalculation wasn't military at all. It was political. The attack unified a deeply divided American public, literally overnight. The next day, President Roosevelt delivered this iconic address to Congress. And just like that, the United States was officially in World War II, changing the course of history forever.
And that leaves us with this incredible historical irony. The very attack that was designed to secure Japan's empire in the Pacific, did it actually guarantee their ultimate defeat? Did this stunning tactical victory awaken a sleeping giant that would eventually lead to their downfall? That's a heck of a question, and one historians are still wrestling with today.